I pull into the curved shell driveway of my beach house, tires crunching over the familiar surface, and immediately sense something is wrong. 4 unfamiliar cars crowd the space where normally there's just room for my sensible Subaru. My stomach tightens as I park awkwardly behind them. This is supposed to be my quiet Friday afternoon retreat. I've been looking forward to it all week, while processing mortgage applications at Coastal Florida Bank. The thought of my porch swing, paperback novel, and the sound of distant waves has kept me sane. I step out into the salty air and hear voices, too many voices coming from my backyard. The gate stands open, and through it I glimpse what appears to be a wedding arch. My pace quickens as I round the corner of the house. The sight that greets me freezes me in place. My carefully tended lawn has been transformed into what can only be described as a wedding venue. White folding chairs form neat rows on either side of a central aisle. A massive tent dominates the far corner, and strangers bustle about placing floral arrangements and hanging strings of lights from my porch railings. And there, in the center of it all, stands my sister Serena, clipboard in hand, directing a man with a ladder toward my grandmother's oak tree. The twinkle lights need to curve through those branches, she instructs, her voice carrying that special tone of authority she's perfected since childhood. Thomas and I want that magical feeling when we have our first dance. I remain rooted in place, watching unnoticed as Serena shifts her attention to a woman arranging white roses. Those centerpieces need to be higher, we want drama. And check if the caterer called back about the seafood option. My mind spins. Caterer? First dance? Thomas is Serena's boyfriend of 8 months, but I hadn't heard anything about an engagement, let alone a wedding at my house. Finally, my paralysis breaks. I step forward, the garden stones cool beneath my feet. Serena's eyes meet mine, and for just a second, I catch a flicker of something guilt, concern, before her face blossoms into a brilliant smile. Rain, perfect timing, she calls, waving me over as if I'm just another wedding vendor. We need your input on the seating chart. I struggle to find my voice. What's going on here? Serena's smile doesn't falter. Oh, didn't Mom tell you? We're finalizing the wedding details. The ceremony's next Saturday. You're just in time to help with the place settings. My gaze sweeps over my transformed property, my sacred weekend retreat that I worked double shifts for 5 years to afford, the down payment representing countless declined dinner invitations and budget lunches. You're having your wedding? Here? At my house? The words come out strained. A woman in a sleek blazer approaches, hand extended. You must be the generous sister I've heard so much about. I'm Vanessa, the wedding planner. The venue is absolutely perfect for what Serena and Thomas envisioned. I shake her hand automatically while processing her words. Generous sister? Venue? My eyes land on a table covered with elegant cream-colored envelopes. I pick one up, sliding out the embossed invitation inside. The words blur before refocusing. Joyfully invite you to celebrate their marriage. At the Bennett Beach House. 19 Pelican Way, Sandpiper Beach, Florida. The memory surfaces unbidden. Standing in this very yard 5 years ago, key in hand, trembling with pride as the realtor congratulated me on my purchase. The months of saving, the overtime hours, the promotion I earned through sheer determination, all culminating in this moment of achievement, my very own piece of paradise. My mother's voice had cut through my joy. Such a waste for just one person, don't you think? The family could have pooled resources for something we could all use. And Serena, champagne already in hand. This is perfect for family gatherings. I can't wait to bring my friends down for beach weekends. I'd smiled tightly, already feeling my ownership slipping away, despite my name alone on the deed. Since then, it's been a steady erosion. Parents bringing dinner guests without warning. Serena borrowing the place for weekend getaways. The extra key I'd given Mom for emergencies somehow multiplying. Family members coming and going as they pleased. The messes I'd clean up, the belongings rearranged, the casual disregard for my space. My gentle reminders met with the same response. We're family, no need for formalities. Vanessa's voice pulls me back. Serena mentioned you were thrilled to host. We've been working on the details for months. Months. They've been planning this for months without asking me. Something shifts inside me. A lifetime of being the responsible one, the reasonable one, the one who makes sacrifices for family harmony, and this is how they repay me. For a moment, I imagine myself exploding, tearing down decorations, demanding everyone leave. Instead, I feel an eerie calm descend. "Excuse me," I say quietly, turning toward my car. "Rain?" Serena calls after me. "Where are you going? We need your help with the seating chart." I keep walking, keys clutched tightly in my hand. "Rain," her voice rises. "Don't be difficult. We have family obligations." The word echoes as I slide into my driver's seat. Obligations. Always my obligations to them, never theirs to me. As I pull away, I catch Serena's frustrated expression in my rearview mirror. For the first time in years, I don't feel the familiar weight of guilt. Instead, I feel something new taking its place. Determination. I drive aimlessly for nearly an hour before returning to my apartment, fingers still white-knuckled around the steering wheel. The unexpected invasion of my beach sanctuary plays on repeat in my mind like a horror film I can't shut off. Inside my apartment, I drop my purse on the kitchen counter and collapse onto the sofa. My phone buzzes incessantly, 3 missed calls from Serena, 2 from Mom, and a text from Dad that simply reads, "Call your mother." Instead, I open my laptop and type Serena Bennett wedding into the search bar. My stomach lurches as results flood the screen. Serena's Pinterest board appears first. Beach house dream wedding created 8 months ago. 8 months of planning, without a single conversation with me. I click through to her Instagram. A post from 3 weeks ago shows her and Thomas toasting champagne on my porch. The caption reads, "Final venue walkthrough at my amazing sister's beach house. Can't wait for our 150 guests to experience this paradise. 3-day celebration. Generous sister. Blessed bride." Comments from relatives pile beneath. "So wonderful of Rain to donate her beautiful home. So, that's what family is for. What a selfless sister you have." My temples throb. Donate? I never donated anything. A notification pops up, a private message from Thomas, Serena's fiancé. "Rain, I'm sorry about all this. I told Serena we should ask you properly. This wasn't my idea." I stare at the message, unsure how to respond. My phone buzzes again. "Mom? Hello?" I answer, my voice tight. "There you are. What on earth were you thinking driving off like that?" Serena is beside herself. "The wedding planner needs your input on several things, and—" "Mom," I interrupt. "Did you know about this? That Serena was planning her entire wedding at my house without asking me?" A pause. "Well, of course I knew. We all did. It's not like you use that place much anyway." I scroll through old text messages between my parents while she speaks. One from Mom to Dad jumps out. "Rain won't mind about the wedding. She never uses the house anyway. Serena needs this." Dad's response, "Should we at least mention it to Rain?" "Mom, better not. She might overthink it. You know how she gets. Serena says it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission." The timestamp shows this exchange happened 4 months ago. "Are you even listening?" Mom's voice cuts through my thoughts. "I have to go," I say, and hang up. For the next hour, I dig deeper. A family group chat I was never added to contains dozens of messages coordinating wedding details at Rain's place. Cousins discussing carpooling. Aunts debating whether to bring extra chairs. Everyone assuming I've happily offered my home. I pull my property deed from my filing cabinet, smoothing the paper with trembling hands. Rain Elizabeth Bennett, the sole name listed as owner. The mortgage statements show payments from my account alone. Every utility bill, insurance payment, and maintenance cost has come from my savings. The realization strikes with startling clarity. This isn't about a house anymore. This is about respect. I search trespassing laws Florida and unauthorized use of private property. I calculate utility costs for 150 guests over 3 days, potential property damage, liability issues if someone is injured. The numbers climb alarmingly. My phone rings. Marlene, my best friend since college. "Your sister's wedding?" she says when I answer. "I just got an invitation to your beach house. Since when are you hosting a wedding?" I explain the situation, my voice growing stronger with each detail. "Rain," Marlene says firmly, "you're not crazy for being upset. This is outrageous. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I reply, "but I'm done being a doormat." The next day at work, my coworker James notices my distraction. "Family drama." I explain briefly during our lunch break. He nods knowingly. "Let me guess they've crossed a boundary and expect you to just accept it?" I look up, surprised. "How did you know?" "Been there." My brother used to borrow my car without asking. Kept doing it until I changed the locks on my house where I kept the keys. He leans forward. Stand firm, Rain. Family can be the worst boundary violators because they think they're entitled to forgiveness. That afternoon, I receive a text from my neighbor at the beach house. Lots of people coming and going from your place lately. Everything okay? The pieces coalesce into a plan. I leave work early and drive to the beach house. I watch from across the street as Serena directs florists carrying arrangements inside. My house, my sanctuary. At the hardware store, I purchase new locks and security cameras. The locksmith arrives an hour after Serena leaves. By sunset, my house is secure again. Back at my apartment, I compose a careful email. To family. Subject: beach house access. Please be advised that effective immediately, anyone wishing to visit my property at 219 Pelican Way must contact me directly for permission and access arrangements. The locks have been changed for security purposes. Sincerely, Rain Bennett. I hit send, then mute my phone as it immediately begins to ring. The responses flood in minutes later. Mom, don't be ridiculous, we're family. Where's the spare key? Dad, call your mother, she's upset. Serena's message comes through as a voice call that I let go to voicemail. Her voice trembles with rage when I play it back. How could you be so selfish right before my wedding? You're ruining everything. I've been planning this for months. I send one response. This is my property purchased with my money. No one uses it without my permission. Then I silence all notifications and open my laptop. A local tourism article catches my eye. Sandpiper Beach Tour Company seeking rental properties for exclusive visitors. I click through to their website. Looking for unique properties to showcase to our high-end clientele. My fingers hover over the Contact Us form. For the first time in days, I feel a sense of calm settling over me. I download their rental agreement, reading each clause carefully, envisioning the perfect solution taking shape. 3 hours later, I've created a comprehensive plan with contingencies for every possible reaction from my family. I've documented the current condition of my house, calculated fair market rental rates, and prepared a contract that protects my interests. When I finally sign the rental agreement with Sandpiper Beach Tour Company, I recognize the moment for what it is, the point of no return, and I don't regret it for a second. 2 days later, my phone buzzes for the 17th time this morning. I know because I've been counting. Each vibration sends a small tremor through the wooden desk at Coastal Florida Bank, where I've been trying to focus on a mortgage application for nearly an hour. The screen lights up with Serena's name again, accompanied by a text preview that begins, "You're being completely ridiculous." I silence the phone and flip it face down. 3 more messages arrive in quick succession, their muted vibrations like angry wasps trapped against the desktop. Trouble at home? James asks from the cubicle next to mine. His eyes meet mine over the partition, concern evident in the slight furrow of his brow. My family discovered boundaries exist, I say, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. They're not taking it well. The elevator chimes, drawing my attention to the bank's main floor. My stomach drops. Mother strides across the marble tiles, her purposeful gait and rigid shoulders broadcasting her mission to anyone watching. She's wearing her church committee outfit, blue linen pantsuit, pearls, formidable pumps. She wouldn't, I whisper, but of course she would. This is exactly what she would do. Is that your mom? James whispers, sinking lower in his chair. I stand before she reaches my desk, intercepting her near the water cooler. Mother, this is my workplace. And apparently the only place I can reach you, she says, voice pitched to carry just far enough that nearby colleagues pause their typing. Since you've decided to ignore everyone's calls and change the locks without warning. The old Rain would have immediately guided her to the break room, desperate to minimize the scene. Instead, I feel a strange calm settle over me, like stepping into cool water. We can talk after work, I say. I'll meet you at Bayside Cafe at 5:30. Your sister is devastated. The venue was perfect. Do you understand what you've done? 5:30, I repeat, my voice lower but firmer. Or not at all. She blinks twice, the gesture almost comical in its surprise. Without another word, she turns and leaves, her heels striking the floor with diminished authority. James whistles low when I return to my desk. That was impressive. I'm as surprised as he is. That evening, I pull into the parking lot of Coral Gables restaurant, where my family has arranged what can only be described as an intervention. Through the window, I see them already seated at our usual corner table. Mother, father, Serena, and to my surprise, Aunt Linda, whose disapproval has terrified me since childhood. "You don't have to go in," Marlene says from the passenger seat. My friend insisted on coming when I mentioned the dinner, calling herself my boundary bodyguard. "Actually," I say, finding that strange calm again, "I do." Inside, Serena doesn't wait for me to sit before launching her attack. "My dream wedding is ruined," she announces, eyes already glistening with practiced tears. "The alternative venue is half the size and nowhere near the beach. Thomas's family is questioning everything now." Father clears his throat. "Pumpkin, we understand you were and surprised by the arrangements, but surely we can work something out. After everything we've done for you," Mother adds, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. "I changed my entire career to give you girls opportunities. I drove you to piano lessons for 8 years. Piano lessons I begged to quit after 3 months," I say quietly. Aunt Linda leans forward. "Rain, in our family, we support each other. Your grandfather would be ashamed to see this selfishness." The table falls silent at the mention of Grandpa Joe, the ultimate family authority even years after his death. This is their nuclear option. I take a slow breath, then look directly at my sister. "Name one time you asked permission before using my house." Serena blinks. "What?" "One time. Just one example when you called ahead, asked if I minded, and respected my answer." Her mouth opens, then closes. "Name one weekend when you left the house exactly as you found it." I continue, turning to my parents. "One occasion, when you didn't bring extra people I'd never met. One visit when you actually treated it as my property rather than the family vacation home." The silence stretches. "You can't," I say, my voice still quiet but carrying a new weight, "because it never happened." Mother recovers first. "This vindictive behavior is—" "Actually," Marlene interjects, setting her phone on the table, "I have something relevant." She taps the screen, pulling up a calendar. Rain made this request 7 months ago. It shows every time she asked her family to please call before coming to her house. 26 requests in 3 years, each one documented with the date and response. James helped me compile this record last week, combing through text messages and emails I'd nearly forgotten. The evidence of my ignored boundaries, laid out chronologically, had been shocking even to me. Father shifts uncomfortably in his seat. No one's denying there might have been some miscommunications. "It's done anyway," I say, cutting through the tension. "The house is rented to Sandpiper Tours for the next 3 weekends, including Serena's wedding date. The contract is signed. The deposit is paid." Serena's tears vanish instantly. "You what?" I slide a folder across the table. "The rental agreement, fully legal and binding." That night, I finalize the last details. The tour company agreement sits signed on my coffee table. My lawyer's letter confirming my exclusive property rights is ready to be sent if needed. The security cameras I installed yesterday are already transmitting footage to my phone. Thomas's text arrives as I'm preparing for bed. "I respect what you're doing, even though I can't say it publicly yet. This wasn't right from the beginning." For a moment, doubt creeps in. Am I being too harsh? The remembered image of strangers rifling through my bedroom drawers during last year's small family gathering banishes the thought. This isn't about punishing them. This is about respecting myself. I think about the years of coming home to moved furniture, borrowed items never returned, and casual disregard. The night I arrived to find 16 strangers having a party, my personal photos handled by people who didn't know my name. The constant assumption that what's mine is everyone's exclusively, but what's theirs remains exclusively theirs. The weight I've carried for years begins to lift. For the first time since buying the beach house, I feel like its true owner. Tomorrow might bring more confrontations, more tears and accusations, but tonight I am certain, this is what freedom feels like. For the first time since discovering the wedding plans, I sleep soundly that night, no longer tangled in bedsheets damp with anxiety, sweat. The realization comes in the morning sunshine. Their reactions only confirm I'm making the right decision. This house was always mine, never theirs. The day before the wedding, even though I said no at that dinner, I watched through binoculars from my parked car across the street as my family transforms my beach house into Wedding Central. The scene unfolds exactly as I anticipated. Serena stands in the center of my backyard, clipboard in hand, directing traffic like a seasoned film director. The arch needs to be centered perfectly with the ocean view. She calls to two men struggling with a white wooden structure. And those chairs should form a gentle curve, not straight rows. This isn't a high school graduation. Ahem. My mother kneels by the garden beds, arranging white roses and baby's breath in stone planters. She seems to be talking to the flowers as she works, probably telling them stories about her own wedding 35 years ago. Dad follows behind a caterer, nodding at everything the man says while occasionally checking his watch. I check mine too. 3, 2, 1. Right on schedule, a white van with coastal Florida tours, emblazoned on the side, pulls into my driveway. 2 more vehicles follow, parking behind it. 7 uniformed employees exit the vehicles, clipboards and equipment in hand. Through my binoculars, I can see the exact moment confusion ripples across my family's faces. The tour manager, a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a professional bun, approaches Serena with an outstretched hand. Even from this distance, I can read the body language. Serena's spine stiffens. Her head tilts in that particular way it does when something isn't going according to her plan. I start my car but don't drive closer. Not yet. My phone buzzes with a text from the tour manager. We've made contact. Contract presented as instructed. I imagine the scene. The manager showing Serena the legally binding document with my signature dated 3 weeks ago. The reservation for a corporate retreat starting tomorrow morning, with setup scheduled for this afternoon. Exclusive use of the property for the entire weekend. My phone erupts with calls. Mom, Dad. Mom again. Serena. I let them all go to voicemail. This moment has been carefully choreographed, and I won't disrupt it by engaging too early. Through my binoculars, I watch as 3 cars pull into the already crowded driveway. Early wedding guests, no doubt. Dad rushes to intercept them, hands waving in what appears to be an explanation. One woman puts her hands to her face in shock. When Serena finally calls for the 6th time, I answer. What did you do? Her voice crackles with barely contained fury. Hello to you too. I reply, my voice remarkably steady. There are people here saying they have a contract. For a tour group. Tomorrow. At your house. My wedding is tomorrow. I correct her gently. My house, not your wedding venue. This is your house, she shrieks. You can tell these people to leave. You never asked me, Serena. The words flow easily, rehearsed in my mind for days. I bought this house with my money. I maintain it with my money, and I rented it out as I wished. You knew about the wedding. Everyone knew. Everyone assumed. No one asked. I keep my tone even. This is what happens when you assume rather than ask for permission. You have to fix this. Panic edges into her voice. Call them off. The house is not available. Not tomorrow. Not for the weekend. I end the call and watch the chaos unfold. Mom frantically working her phone, probably calling every venue in a 50-mile radius. Dad shepherding confused guests back to their cars. Serena in animated conversation with the wedding planner, her arms gesturing wildly. An hour later, my phone pings with notifications. Social media updates from relatives are shifting from excitement about the beautiful beach wedding to confusion about venue complications. A cousin posts, anyone know what happened to the generous sister's offer? 20 minutes later, Thomas calls. His voice sounds different, measured, respectful. Rain, I want you to know I always felt uncomfortable about using your house without formally asking. Thank you for saying that, Thomas. My parents have agreed to host in their backyard. It won't be the beach, but with some quick rearranging, we can make it work. He pauses. I understand why you did this. After we hang up, I receive the first unexpected text from my aunt, Gloria. Always thought it strange they'd use your house without asking. Standing your ground takes courage. The tour company staff continues setting up their equipment. Beach chairs in neat rows facing the water. Informational placards about local marine life. A registration table on the front porch. I finally drive away, leaving my property being used exactly as I intended, with permission, with respect, with boundaries intact. For the first time in years, I feel something unfamiliar unfurling in my chest. It feels remarkably like freedom. 3 days later, the doorbell rings just as I'm organizing the last of my documentation. Through the peephole, I see my parents standing shoulder to shoulder, their postures rigid with indignation. I take a deep breath, tuck the final photograph into its folder, and open the door. Rain, Elizabeth Bennet. My mother says, her voice wavering between fury and tears. How could you humiliate your sister this way? Her wedding is in shambles. My father stands slightly behind her, his disappointment radiating like heat. After everything we've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us? By destroying Serena's special day? I step back, gesturing toward my living room. Would you like to come in? Their momentary hesitation reveals their surprise at my calm. They expected tears or defensive anger, my usual response pattern. Instead, I lead them to the couch where 3 water glasses wait on coasters. I've anticipated this visit for days. You need to make this right, my mother continues, her voice gaining strength as she settles onto my couch. A public apology at minimum. And you'll need to compensate for the venue change. Thomas's parents' backyard was barely adequate. My father leans forward, his tone softening into the reasonable voice he uses when closing business deals. Sweetheart, everyone makes mistakes, but this is family. If you don't make amends, I'm afraid you'll find yourself cut off from. I've prepared something I'd like you to see, I interrupt, sliding a thick blue folder across the coffee table. My mother glances at it without touching it. What's this supposed to be? Documentation, I answer, opening it myself. 5 years of boundary violations at my beach house. I've organized it chronologically. F now. Their expressions shift from righteous anger to wary confusion as I begin laying out photographs. Wine stains on my grandmother's quilt after an unauthorized small gathering that left 17 empty bottles. Cigarette burns on the deck furniture from my cousin's friends. Muddy footprints across my white bedroom carpet from someone's dog. I've been silent for too long, I say, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. Every time I asked for respect, you dismissed me. Every boundary I set, you crossed. Every boundary I set. My father shifts uncomfortably. That's just normal wear and tear. This isn't normal, I counter, pulling out a stack of receipts. These are the repair costs. Notice the signatures? All mine. I've never asked for a dime from any of you. My mother's face flushes. We're family. We shouldn't need formal invitations or. Family respects each other, I say, cutting her off with a gentleness that surprises even me. The house is mine. My name is on the deed. My money paid for it. I slide forward the property documentation, the mortgage statement, the insurance policy, all bearing only my name. You had no right to, my father begins. I had every right, I reply, tapping my finger on the deed, just as I had every right to rent it to the tour company. Their eyes widen as I pull out my phone and scroll to the security camera footage from 3 months ago. My mother leading 6 strangers through my bedroom, opening drawers, showing off our family beach house. This is private property, not a family timeshare, I say. And this, I place Serena's wedding invitation on top of the pile, was planned without my knowledge or consent. My mother's hands tremble slightly as she picks up the invitation. For the first time, I see uncertainty in her eyes. If you want any relationship with me going forward, these are my terms. I pull out a single sheet of paper. No one visits without explicit permission. I require advance notice and confirmation. All copies of my keys must be returned immediately. My father's face darkens. You can't dictate. I can and I am, I say, meeting his gaze. These aren't requests, they're requirements. The silence stretches between us. My mother stares at the evidence spread across the table, the physical manifestation of years of disregard. I never saw it from your perspective, she finally whispers, something genuine breaking through her defensive shell. My father rubs his face, suddenly looking older. We didn't think. It wasn't our intention to. Intent doesn't erase impact, I say, gathering the documents back into the folder. I love you both, but I won't compromise on this anymore. The power shift is palpable in the room. Their manipulation tactics, the tears, the guilt, the threats of exclusion lie useless between us like spent ammunition. My father reaches into his pocket and places a key on the table. My mother hesitates before adding hers beside it. Serena has one too, my mother admits. I nod. I'll get it from her. She won't take this well, my father warns. That's not my responsibility, I reply. As they prepare to leave, my mother pauses at the door. Will you come to Sunday dinner next week? I meet her eyes steadily. I'll let you know by Thursday if I'm available. Something passes between us, a new understanding. She nods once, accepting this small but significant shift in our dynamics. After they leave, I stand in my quiet apartment, my heart racing not with anxiety but with a strange, unfamiliar lightness. For the first time in years, I feel the weight of their expectations lifting from my shoulders. I pick up the keys they left behind, symbols of a boundary finally respected, and place them in my desk drawer. The battle isn't over. Serena will be harder to convince than my parents, but for now, in this moment, I've reclaimed something essential. My house, my boundaries, my life. The morning sunlight spills across my deck as I settle into my porch swing, coffee mug warming my hands. 6 months have passed since the wedding debacle, and my beach house feels truly mine for the first time. No unexpected visitors, no rearranged furniture, no apologetic texts about borrowing the place for the weekend. I run my fingers along the new cushions I chose last month, soft teal fabric that reminds me of the ocean at midday. The bookshelves I installed now hold my favorite novels instead of Serena's forgotten magazines. Wind chimes tinkle softly from the corner of the porch, a sound that has become synonymous with peace. This is what home should feel like, I whisper to myself, watching a pair of sandpipers dance along the shoreline. My phone buzzes with a text from James at work. Congrats again on the promotion. Bank's lucky to have you in charge of the commercial loan division. The promotion came after I pitched my own restructuring plan, instead of letting the VP take credit for my ideas. Something shifted inside me that day in the conference room when I said, "Actually, I developed this strategy and would like to present it myself." The confidence from standing up to my family spilled into every aspect of my life. Last Saturday, I had dinner with Mom and Dad for the first time in months. The conversation felt stilted at first, but they respected the boundaries I'd established. Dad asked before helping himself to more water. Mom called yesterday to thank me for coming rather than assuming we'd meet again this weekend. Some relatives still don't understand. Aunt Patricia insists I'm holding a grudge, while Uncle Steve maintains family should have unlimited access to each other's homes. I've accepted that not everyone will adapt to the new normal. Thomas, surprisingly, calls occasionally. After marrying Serena at his parents' garden, which turned out beautifully despite the last-minute change, he seems genuinely invested in building a respectful relationship. Your sister is learning, he told me last week. Slowly, but she's trying. Ender. My doorbell chimes at exactly 11 o'clock. Serena stands on my porch, hands clasped nervously in front of her. Thanks for letting me visit, she says, waiting for me to invite her in. We walk to the kitchen where I've prepared a simple lunch. She notices the family photos I've rearranged on the wall still present, but no longer dominating the space. I like what you've done with the place, she offers, settling into a chair I gesture toward. Our conversation meanders through safe topics until she finally says, I never really thought about how we treated your house before. I just assumed that it was partly yours? I finish. She nods, examining her sandwich. I'm sorry. The words hang between us, fragile but sincere. At 4 o'clock, Entino, she glances at her watch and stands. I should go. Thank you for respecting my time, I tell her, walking her to the door. Her smile is tentative but genuine. This was nice. Maybe we could do it again sometime? I'd like that, I reply, surprised to find I mean it. Later, sitting on my deck with Marlene and 2 new friends from my pottery class, I pour wine into mismatched glasses. We laugh as the sun begins its descent, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. My phone lights up with a text from Serena. Thanks for having me over today. Looking forward to next time with permission, of course. I smile, setting down my phone to rejoin the conversation. The boundaries I've built haven't shrunk my world as I once feared. They've expanded it, creating space for relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The ocean breeze carries the scent of salt and possibility as evening settles around us. For the first time in years, I feel perfectly at home in my own life. My coffee mug slips from my fingers and shatters against the kitchen tile, sending ceramic shards skittering across the floor. I barely notice. My eyes remain fixed on my phone, thumb scrolling through image after image of smiling faces gathered in my aunt's sunlit backyard. 34 guests. I count them methodically, as if the number might somehow change if I try again. Cousins I haven't seen in years. My mother's college roommate. Even Great Aunt Judith who needs a walker to get around. Everyone except me. The bridal shower photos show tables draped in cream-colored linens, floral centerpieces in Fiona's favorite coral and mint, champagne flutes raised in countless toasts. A celebration meticulously planned weeks, maybe months in advance. A celebration I never knew existed until this moment. The sting is sharper because just last month, I sent Fiona a handwritten congratulations card with pressed flowers from my balcony garden. I'd even offered to help design her wedding materials, invitations, programs, whatever she needed. Free of charge, a gift from one cousin to another. My Portland condo suddenly feels cold despite spring sunshine streaming through the windows. The light that warmed me minutes ago now feels harsh, exposing. I realize in that moment I wasn't just forgotten. I was deliberately erased. I sink onto a kitchen stool, memories washing over me like a tide I can't escape. Last Thanksgiving flashes before me. Aunt Marlene's voice carrying across the dining room as she praised Fiona's recent promotion at the bank. Vice president at 29? She'd announced, beaming at my younger cousin. Always knew she'd make something of herself. Then, Aunt Marlene's gaze had shifted to me, her smile thinning, and Ocean still doing that little hobby of hers, the logos and whatnot. That little hobby that paid for this condo. That little hobby that built a client list including 3 national brands. My parents had sat silently, nodding along, while relatives positioned Fiona as the golden one, right in front of me. Even when I'd mentioned the down payment on my condo, $150,000 I'd saved over 7 years, the conversation had quickly pivoted back to Fiona's engagement ring. My hands tremble as I pick up my phone again. I pull up my mother's contact information and press call before I can talk myself out of it. She answers on the 4th ring. Ocean? Is everything all right? Her voice holds that familiar note of concern tinged with judgment, as if she's already decided whatever I'm calling about is an overreaction. There was a bridal shower for Fiona yesterday. My voice comes out steadier than I expected. Everyone was there. Why wasn't I invited? A weighted pause stretches between us, then a sigh. Oh, that. Well, Marlene thinks you always make everything about yourself. Fiona deserves her special day. The accusation lands like a slap. Make everything about myself? When have I ever... Please don't start, Ocean. This is exactly what we wanted to avoid. Your cousin deserves to be celebrated without drama. I stand up straighter, suddenly aware that my shoulders have been hunched forward, my body instinctively making itself smaller. So I'm... drama now? That's what you all think of me? It's not personal, Ocean. Not personal. The same words my mother uses whenever she wants to dismiss my feelings. My free hand stops trembling. A strange calm settles over me as I realize this isn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, planned, discussed. I'm going to call Aunt Marlene. Ocean, don't... My mother's voice rises with alarm, but I've already ended the call. I find Aunt Marlene's number and dial, surprised by my own steadiness. When her voice comes through, clipped and impatient, I don't bother with pleasantries. Why wasn't I invited to Fiona's bridal shower? A pause. Then, I was wondering when you'd call. No apology, no excuse. Just cold acknowledgement. You shouldn't be there. Fiona deserves a day that's just hers. Just hers. As if my presence would somehow diminish my cousin's happiness. As if I'm a shadow that might darken her spotlight. I'm her cousin, her only cousin. The words feel hollow even as I say them. Blood relation clearly means nothing. Listen, Ocean. Aunt Marlene's voice hardens. We've all discussed this. The wedding plans too. I suggest you don't make this into something bigger than it needs to be. Some relationships in this family are already strained. The threat isn't subtle. Push back. And what little connection I still have with my family might vanish entirely. I stand at my kitchen window, staring at the city spread out below, and suddenly understand with perfect clarity. My family values appearances over genuine connection. They always have. I hang up without saying goodbye, the silence in my apartment no longer oppressive but clarifying. A cardinal lands on my balcony railing, its bright red feathers vivid against the gray spring sky. It watches me for a moment before flying away, and I find myself wondering what it might be like to be that free. That day later, my phone pings with a notification while I'm sketching logo concepts for a new client. I almost ignore it. Deadlines wait for no one, but habit makes me glance at the screen. A group message from Aunt Marlene. Remember to bring Fiona's wedding flowers on Saturday. Good thing we didn't invite Ocean, less drama. My pencil stops mid-stroke. The room tilts slightly as I lean against the kitchen counter, my breathing shallow, the phone screen blurring before my eyes. I blink hard, reading it again. This wasn't an oversight, not a simple mistake, a coordinated family exclusion. I take a screenshot before the message disappears with a soft whoosh sound. Deleted, but not before I captured the evidence. The notification shows Fiona, Aunt Marlene, and my mother all in the thread. My mother. Of course. The next morning, I drive to my parents' suburban home, the screenshot burning a hole in my pocket like a loaded gun. Mom answers the door in her gardening clothes, dirt smudged across one cheek. Ocean? What a surprise. I was just about to make some tea. I follow her into the living room where she sits in her favorite armchair, settling into it with the comfortable ease of someone who feels secure in their position. I remain standing, suddenly aware of the family photos arranged on the mantel. Fiona's centered in most of them, my face half hidden in shadows or caught mid-blink. I got an interesting message yesterday. I say, pulling out my phone. Accidentally sent to me. But... Her face changes when I show her the screenshot, not surprise, but resignation. She doesn't even try to deny it. We all agreed it would be easier this way. She says, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her pants. Fiona deserves a beautiful wedding without complications. Complications? The word tastes bitter. You mean me. Now, Ocean, don't be dramatic. She sighs, using the tone reserved for when I'm being difficult. Perhaps you should make other plans for that weekend in May. Other plans? I repeat, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. While my cousin gets married at the Grand Lake Hotel? That $95,000 wedding, where every distant relative I barely know is invited except me? Mom's eyebrows lift slightly. How did you know about the venue? Cousin Rachel called last week asking about carpooling to the wedding. A small, cruel satisfaction blooms when I see her flinch. She assumed I'd be there. The silence stretches between us like a chasm growing wider by the second. Your father and I think it's better this way, she finally says. The whole family agrees. The whole family has been told what about me exactly? I ask, voice barely above a whisper. She looks away, fiddling with a loose thread on her sleeve. Just that you've always been sensitive about Fiona getting attention. The betrayal lands like a physical blow. Years of holidays where I sat quietly while Fiona was showered with praise. Years of watching my accomplishments dismissed while hers were celebrated with champagne toasts. You're trying to erase me from the family narrative. I say, the realization crystallizing. Everyone already believes I'm difficult because that's what you've told them. That's not true, she protests, but her eyes won't meet mine. It is true, and now I have a choice except being excluded or risk losing what little connection we still have. Mom stands, crossing to the window. I hope you'll make the right decision. Your father and I have been helping with your property taxes. If you make trouble about this wedding. If I make trouble? The words escape in a harsh laugh. Like standing up for myself? Like refusing to be erased? This is exactly why Marlene thought it best not to include you. Her voice hardens. Everything becomes a drama with you. 1. I leave without saying goodbye, driving aimlessly for hours. 3 client deadlines pass while I sit paralyzed in my apartment, unable to focus on the simplest design tasks. 3 days of potential revenue vanish while I stare at my phone, waiting for anyone in my family to say this was all a terrible mistake. No one does. That evening, Isla brings Thai food and wine to my condo, listening as I recount every detail. Unlike my family, she doesn't interrupt or dismiss my feelings. That's textbook emotional manipulation. She says, refilling my glass. They're gaslighting you into believing you're the problem when they're the ones excluding you. Her validation feels like the first sip of water after days in a desert. Marlene and your mom are tag-teaming to control the narrative, Isla continues. Classic toxic family dynamics. Later, alone on my balcony, I watch the city lights flicker on as darkness falls. The cardinal returns, perching briefly on the railing before flying away. As I sat there sipping wine gone warm, I wondered whether I should attend the wedding anyway and force a confrontation, or step away completely and build my own celebration elsewhere. The family I'd known all my life was slipping away, but was it worth fighting for relationships that caused so much pain? Fiona's engagement photos appear on my Instagram feed at precisely 8:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'm midway through my first cup of coffee when her radiant smile fills my screen, her fiancé gazing at her with practiced adoration against a backdrop of autumn leaves. The caption beneath cuts sharper than any knife could, celebrating our journey with those who truly support us, keeping our wedding intimate with only the people who've always been there. My phone buzzes 3 times in rapid succession. Private messages from cousins I've exchanged perhaps 10 words with at family gatherings over the years. Why are you causing drama during Fiona's special time? Family should support each other no matter what. Aunt Marlene is so upset about your behavior. I set my phone face down on the kitchen counter, my hand trembling slightly. The accusations make no sense until I realize what's happening. They're rewriting history, crafting a narrative where I declined an invitation, rather than acknowledging I was deliberately excluded. My grandmother's call comes that evening as I'm washing dishes, her voice wavering with disappointment. Ocean, honey, I never thought you'd refuse to support your cousin's special day. The plate in my hands nearly slips. Grandma, I wasn't invited. That's not what Marlene told me. Her voice hardens with certainty. She said you couldn't put aside your jealousy for even one day. After we hang up, I stand motionless at my kitchen sink, water running over my hands until it turns from warm to cold. The family story about me is taking shape without my input. According to Isla, who still speaks with my mother weekly, Aunt Marlene has been sharing tearful accounts of my jealousy issues with anyone who will listen. The following week, Barton Media cancels our contract for their spring campaign. The email is polite but clear. We've heard you can be difficult to work with. We need someone who fits our collaborative culture. 3 days later, Westerly Home Goods pulls out of our preliminary discussions. The loss of both projects carves $27,000 from my expected quarterly income. I track the connections methodically. Barton's marketing director plays tennis with my uncle. Westerly's owner attends the same church as Aunt Marlene. Sleep becomes a distant memory. I spend nights hunched over my computer, redesigning my portfolio website instead of resting. Every pixel adjustment, every color shift, feels like reclaiming a small piece of my narrative. At 3 a.m., with my eyes burning from screen glare, I wonder how many hours of work it will take to outrun the whispers. My once comfortable routine fractures. I stop visiting Marigold Coffee despite their perfect oat milk lattes because Aunt Marlene's Bridge Club meets there Thursday mornings. I drive 15 minutes out of my way to shop at a different grocery store after spotting my mother's friend Caroline, examining apples in my usual produce section. Checking social media becomes a form of self-harm. Each notification triggers a physical response, quickened pulse, shallow breathing, fingers turning cold. I start documenting every interaction with family in a leather-bound journal, recording dates, exact wording, witnesses present. The evidence feels important somehow, though I'm not sure who I'm collecting it for. The anonymous text arrives on a Sunday morning. Some people aren't stable enough to attend formal events. Your absence is a kindness to everyone. I recognize the phrasing Aunt Marlene's particular brand of cruelty wrapped in concern. The phone slips from my fingers onto the couch as something inside me finally breaks. The doorbell rings at that exact moment. I consider ignoring it until I hear Isla's voice through the door. I know you're in there, Ocean. I brought Thai food and wedding magazines. She stands on my threshold, clutching a paper bag from Bangkok Kitchen and a stack of glossy publications. Her camera bag is slung over one shoulder. What are you doing here? My voice sounds hollow even to my own ears. Isla pushes past me into the apartment. Let's plan something that's actually worth celebrating, a day that's about joy, not appearances. I'm about to ask what she means when my mother's silver sedan pulls into the visitor parking space visible from my living room window. My stomach clenches. Client call in 5 minutes. I lie, reaching for my laptop as my mother knocks at the door. Isla squeezes my shoulder before retreating to the kitchen with our food. My mother enters without waiting for an invitation, her eyes taking inventory of my living space as if searching for evidence of my supposed instability. We need to talk, Ocean. She sits primly on my couch, her handbag balanced on her knees. This has gone far enough. The invitations are already printed. We're also down this. What invitations? I remain standing, suddenly aware of the power dynamics at play. Fiona's wedding invitations. She smooths an invisible wrinkle from her slacks. You need to let this go. This isn't about an invitation. The clarity in my voice surprises even me. It's about years of being treated as less than. Nadia. My mother's face hardens. If you can't support Fiona's happiness, Maybe you're not the daughter I thought you were. The words should hurt, but instead, they illuminate something I've never seen clearly before. I straighten my shoulders, reclaiming the full height I've spent years unconsciously diminishing around my family. I'm exactly the daughter you raised. I tell her, my voice steady. I just stopped accepting the role you assigned me. Something flickers across her face, surprise, perhaps even respect before she composes herself. But in that moment, I realize a fundamental truth that changes everything. My worth isn't determined by family validation. It never was. Later that evening, Isla and I sit on my balcony, half-eaten Thai food between us. She scrolls through her calendar on her phone. I have a client photo shoot in Santa Barbara 3 weeks later. Come with me. We'll make it a working vacation. I could use an assistant. The offer brings unexpected tears to my eyes. While my family crafts excuses for my exclusion, my friends are creating alternatives for my inclusion. My phone chimes with a text from Thomas. Just declined my invite to Fiona's wedding. Not going somewhere my friend isn't welcome. The next morning, I wake up and speak confidently about my design business during a networking breakfast for the first time in months. 3 potential clients request follow-up meetings. Something has shifted inside me, a quiet certainty replacing the desperate need for approval. When Isla and I arrive in Santa Barbara 3 weeks later, the Pacific Ocean stretches before us like possibility itself. At a small bookshop near the marina, I meet Mateo, the owner with kind eyes and a quiet laugh who asks thoughtful questions about my design work. You should see my place at sunset, he says after our 3rd coffee together. I restored an old seaside villa just north of here. The light is perfect for someone with your eye for design. Standing on his terrace that evening, watching the sun sink into the ocean, a thought forms with unexpected clarity. What if the answer isn't fighting for inclusion in a celebration that doesn't want me? What if I wrote a different story for myself entirely? 2 months later, my phone sits on Mateo's kitchen counter, its screen displaying a half-finished invitation design. The coastal villa's morning light streams through tall windows, illuminating the space where 18 place settings will soon host the only people who truly matter in my life. What do you think about this font pairing? I point to the screen, where elegant script contrasts with clean sans serif text. Too predictable? Mateo leans forward, the scent of his coffee mingling with the salt air drifting through open windows. It feels like you, confident but not shouting for attention. I smile, making a small adjustment to the spacing. For 3 weeks, every spare moment has gone into planning this gathering. Not a reaction to family drama, but a celebration reflecting who I've become. Each element from hand-pressed botanical prints to custom playlists showcases my professional talents while honoring genuine connections. May 15th, I say, tracing the date on screen. Far enough from Fiona's wedding that no one can claim I'm being competitive. Does it matter what they think? Mateo asks, his voice gentle but challenging. It matters that I know my intentions. I save the file and close my laptop. This isn't about them anymore. For the first time since finding those bridal shower photos, excitement bubbles up without the bitter aftertaste of rejection. I'm creating rather than reacting, building something authentic rather than fighting for space where I'm unwanted. My phone rings, Aunt Marlene's name flashing on screen. I consider letting it go to voicemail, then decide against it. I'm done hiding. Hello? My voice comes out steady, professional. Ocean. Her voice could freeze water. What's this I hear about you planning some vacation during family wedding season? You need to take down those social media posts immediately. I frown, confusion momentarily replacing caution. What posts? Isla's photography page. The save the date announcement for your event. At a seaside villa? On May 15th? My stomach drops. May 15th? But Fiona's wedding isn't until June. Silence stretches between us. When Marlene speaks again, her voice drips with artificial sweetness. Oh, didn't you know? The date was moved weeks ago. May 15th at the Grand Monarch Hotel. Everyone's been informed. Everyone except me. So you're having your little party the same day as Fiona's wedding? The accusation hangs in the air. Family will take sides, Ocean. Think about what you're doing. My first instinct is panic. Should I change my date? Apologize for a conflict I didn't create? But as Marlene continues listing reasons I should rearrange my plans, something hardens inside me. I look at the invitation design, at Mateo setting coffee mugs in the sink, at the home that welcomed me without conditions. I won't rearrange my joy to accommodate your judgment, I say quietly. What did you just say to me? The date stays, Aunt Marlene. Anyone who wants to attend either event should follow their heart. You've made yours clear. I end the call before she can respond. Mateo watches me carefully, waiting. Apparently, Fiona's wedding is the same day as our celebration, I tell him. Complete coincidence. Do you want to change our date? The question hangs between us. With both ceremonies now scheduled for the same day, I faced a choice: postpone my celebration to avoid conflict, or proceed with the day Mateo and I had planned. Was preserving peace with people who excluded me worth disrupting my own happiness? No. I answer finally. We're keeping our date. Mateo nods, understanding without needing explanation. This is the difference between chosen family and blood ties. One requires performance, the other offers acceptance. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzes with Isla's message. Saw your final invitation design. Gorgeous. Consider photography services my gift to you both. I smile, typing back my thanks. Within minutes, a group chat forms with friends, coordinating travel plans, turning our gathering into a weekend celebration. Thomas offers to handle wine selection, while Jana wants to arrange flowers from local markets. You focus on the creative stuff. Mateo says that evening, showing me spreadsheets, tracking accommodations and transportation. I've got logistics covered. As we work side by side, him managing practical details, me designing personal touches, I realize we're creating something neither of my parents would understand. This isn't about reaction, but intention. Not about competition, but completion. My phone begins buzzing constantly with family messages, but friends create a protective buffer. When Aunt Marlene sends a paragraph about selfish choices, Isla responds with oceanfront venue photos. When my mother texts asking how I could do this, Mateo hands me paint swatches for table settings. A week before our celebration, an unexpected text arrives from my cousin Rachel, whom I haven't spoken to in months. Grandmother's asking questions about why you weren't invited to anything. Marlene's story isn't holding up anymore. I read it twice, unsure how to respond. The next day, another message arrives, this time from Uncle David. Something doesn't add up about this wedding drama. Fiona keeps changing her explanation. The family narrative, so carefully constructed, begins showing cracks. Different relatives have been told different versions of my exclusion, and the contradictions are becoming noticeable. When my grandmother's name appears on my phone that evening, I answer immediately. Ocean? Her voice sounds smaller than I remember. I'd like to hear your side of this wedding business. Before I can form a response, another call beeps through my mother. I let it go to voicemail, focusing on my grandmother's questions. Later, I listen to my mother's message, her voice strained with forced casualness. We need to talk about a compromise. Can we meet tomorrow? It's urgent. I set the phone down, looking out at the sunset, painting Mateo's garden in golden light. For the first time, the thought of facing my family doesn't fill me with dread. Whatever comes next, I'm standing on solid ground. The knock on my door comes at 8:15 on a Tuesday morning, 3 days before my ceremony. Through the peephole, I see my mother clutching her purse with white knuckles while Aunt Marlene stands beside her, designer handbag dangling from a tight grip. I consider pretending I'm not home, but the truth needs addressing eventually. Ocean, sweetheart. My mother's voice carries forced cheer as she steps into my condo. We thought we should talk. Aunt Marlene follows, her gaze sweeping critically across my living room where design samples for my ceremony with Mateo lie neatly arranged. This has gone far enough, she says, not bothering with pleasantries. I remain standing while they settle onto my sofa. The power dynamic feels different now. In their presence, I no longer shrink. We'd like to propose a compromise, my mother says, hands fidgeting with her wedding ring. You can attend Fiona's reception. The evening portion only. If her eyes meet Marlene's briefly, you cancel your party. Think about how this looks to everyone, Aunt Marlene adds. 2 events on the same day divides the family, forces people to choose sides. Quote. My mother leans forward, voice dropping. Your grandmother is very stressed about this situation. At her age, this kind of family conflict isn't good for her heart. The manipulation is so transparent, it almost makes me laugh. Instead, I walk to my drafting table and return with a leather portfolio. I'd like to show you something, I say, opening it to reveal watercolor sketches of an intimate seaside ceremony. This is what Mateo and I have planned. 18 guests. No formal invitations. Just people who genuinely care about us. I turn pages slowly, showcasing menus I've hand-lettered, custom place settings, flower arrangements in shades of amber and sage. The date was set weeks before I learned about Fiona's wedding. I explain, voice steady. We didn't choose it to compete. We chose it because the villa has perfect sunset lighting for photography. My mother's brow furrows in confusion. But why didn't you tell us? I pull out another folder containing mock-ups of elegantly designed invitations. Invitations I never sent. I respected your decision to exclude me. I didn't think you'd want to know. She looks genuinely stunned. Ocean. We never meant. I'm not asking anyone to choose. I interrupt gently. You made your choice months ago. This celebration isn't about Fiona. I close the portfolio. It isn't even about you. Aunt Marlene stands abruptly, pacing toward my design wall where client projects hang alongside ceremony plans. This doesn't change anything. She insists. Playing dress-up won't change that Fiona's wedding is the real event. I feel something snap inside me, not in anger but in clarity. I'm not playing anything, Aunt Marlene. I'm living authentically while you're performing. I gesture toward my portfolio. These designs aren't pretend. They're my profession. The profession you've dismissed as that little hobby for years. I slide a brochure across the coffee table. This is my wedding portfolio. 3 national brands have hired me based on these designs. While you were telling everyone about my jealousy issues, I was building a business that pays for this condo. My mother sinks deeper into the sofa, eyes lingering on a photo of Mateo and me at his villa. For the first time, she seems to see beyond her sister's narrative. Were we really that cruel? She asks quietly. Aunt Marlene snorts, grabbing her purse. This is ridiculous. I'm not sitting here while she twists everything around. She storms toward the door but pauses with her hand on the knob. Fiona's wedding cost $95,000. It's at the Grand Hotel. There will be 200 guests. That's what a real celebration looks like. I smile, not unkindly. That sounds lovely for Fiona. I hope she feels truly seen there. After Marlene slams the door, my mother remains seated, looking smaller than I've ever seen her. You taught me I wasn't worth including. I tell her, voice soft but firm. I taught myself I was worth celebrating. She opens her mouth to respond, but her phone chimes with a text. She reads it, face paling slightly. What is it? I ask. Your cousin Deborah is asking if she can come to your ceremony instead of Fiona's. She looks up, bewildered. How does she even know about it? I shrug. People talk, the same way they talked about excluding me. After my mother leaves, promising to think about everything, I water my balcony garden, wondering which ceremony she'll attend, if either. My phone rings just as the sun slips behind downtown buildings. Ocean? Mateo's voice sounds excited. You won't believe this. That wedding blog I told you about, Modern Celebrations, they want to feature our ceremony. They love the idea of an intimate designer's wedding that focuses on authenticity over extravagance. I lean against the railing, watching a cardinal land nearby, the same vibrant red as the one I'd seen the day I discovered the bridal shower photos. The story was shifting in ways I never anticipated. I whisper, more to myself than to Mateo. For the first time since this all began, I feel neither sad nor angry, just free. 7 weeks after our ceremony, I nearly drop my phone when Mateo shows me the statistics. 80,000 likes on our wedding photo. The number seems impossible, yet there it is on the screen, along with hundreds of comments praising our authentic celebration of love. Look at this one, Mateo says, pointing to a comment from a popular design blogger. Ocean's attention to meaningful details rather than empty extravagance redefines what a modern ceremony can be. I laugh softly, remembering all the family gatherings where I sat silently while relatives fawned over Fiona's conventional choices. Now strangers are celebrating my vision, while my family's Grand Hotel wedding has faded into the background of social media memory. My design business calendar now bulges with appointments. 3 major brands have reached out since the wedding feature went viral, tripling my client base overnight. Yesterday, an editor from California Wedding Quarterly emailed about featuring our ceremony, specifically requesting an interview about my design work. The irony? I tell Mateo as we sit on our balcony watching the sunset paint Portland's skyline. They excluded me to keep me from stealing focus. And now, the doorbell interrupts my thought. A courier delivers a cream-colored envelope with Aunt Marlene's distinctive handwriting. Inside, a terse letter demands I decline the magazine feature, out of respect for Fiona's privacy during this difficult time. My hands should be shaking. 7 weeks ago, they would have been. Instead, a calm clarity washes over me as I tuck the letter back into its envelope. What will you do? Matteo asks, his voice gentle. I walk to my desk and pull out a copy of the magazine that featured my design portfolio last month. I slip it into a mailing envelope with a note I've composed without hesitation. I'm not competing with Fiona. I'm completing my own story. Note: no anxiety floods my system as I seal the envelope. No desperate need for approval tightens my chest. The transformation still surprises me how completely I've stopped seeking validation from people determined to withhold it. 2 days later, Isla calls with news that sends me spinning through our apartment. The showcase is confirmed, she announces. 30 designers, and you're the headliner. My friends have organized a rewritten design showcase at a restored estate near Seattle, featuring artists who've reimagined traditional approaches. The event emphasizes authentic connection over manufactured perfection, substance over performance. At the opening reception, Isla raises her glass. To writing ourselves into stories worthy of our lives, she toasts, and the room erupts in applause. I stand among people who celebrate rather than diminish my vision, and the contrast to family gatherings couldn't be starker. The following month, Matteo and I move into a modest apartment overlooking downtown. The space is smaller than my condo, but filled with light and possibilities. My calendar now includes speaking engagements about authentic design alongside client meetings with companies that value substance over flash. I'm arranging prints for my office wall when the doorbell rings. When I open it, Aunt Marlene stands there with Fiona slightly behind her. Enthapted. We need to talk, Marlene says, pushing past me into the apartment. This has gone far enough. Fiona looks uncomfortable as Marlene continues. Was all this necessary? The magazine? The showcase? Were you so determined to make a point? I study their faces. Marlene's indignant, Fiona's uncertain, and feel a surprising wave of compassion. You think this is about you? I ask quietly. It's the first time I've celebrated without worrying how you'd twist it. That's all. They leave shortly after, Marlene stiff-backed and silent, Fiona with a backward glance I can't quite interpret. As I watched them leave the showcase, I wondered if healing family wounds requires both sides to acknowledge the injury, or if sometimes the healthiest path is to simply tend your own garden and let others make their choice. What would you do? Work to repair relationships that caused such pain, or focus on nurturing the connections that helped you bloom?
You are not my biological child, so I conveniently forgot to put your name in the will. My father announced this at his 65th birthday gala. The room of Chicago elites erupted in laughter, expecting me to run away in tears. Instead, I walked right up to the stage, placed my gift on the podium, and ripped it to shreds right in front of his face. He called me a worthless dropout. He had no idea that torn piece of paper was the only thing standing between him and total bankruptcy. I am Maddie, 33 years old, and I just destroyed my family's $4 million empire. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. The Oak Brook Country Club was buzzing with the quiet hum of wealth and privilege. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over 100 of Chicago's most elite real estate developers, investors, and socialites. Waiters in crisp white shirts circulated with silver trays of champagne and caviar. It was the perfect setting for my father Richard to celebrate his 65th birthday. He stood at the front of the grand ballroom, a microphone in his hand, basking in the adoration of his peers. To my left sat my mother Diane, her face pulled tight by recent cosmetic procedures and a frozen, practiced smile. Next to her was my older sister Ashley, the undisputed golden child of the family, practically vibrating with vanity. Beside Ashley sat her husband Devin. He was a highly ambitious African-American investment banker whose custom-tailored suits and arrogant smirk perfectly matched his ruthless reputation in the financial district. I sat at the very end of the table wearing a simple black dress sipping sparkling water. For years, I was the scapegoat, the quiet disappointment who dropped out of law school because the crushing anxiety of their expectations had broken me. They thought I was working as some low-level clerk. They had no idea I had spent the last decade teaching myself high finance, eventually becoming the anonymous founder and CEO of Aegis Capital, a venture capital firm currently dominating the commercial real estate market. Richard tapped his glass with a fork, commanding absolute silence. He adjusted his silk tie and looked out over the crowd. "I have built a legacy," he began, his voice booming through the speakers. "The Richard Center, my $4 million commercial development downtown, will stand for generations. It is a monument to our family name. And a legacy of this magnitude requires pure bloodlines." He paused, his eyes sliding past the wealthy investors and landing directly on me. A cruel, calculated smirk crossed his face. "Maddie," he said, speaking directly into the microphone. "Since you are not my biological child, I realize there is no space for you in my future. I have officially cut you from my will. The family trust is strictly for my real family. You have been a burden on my generosity for long enough." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom, followed instantly by a wave of cruel, mocking laughter from his closest associates. Diane covered her mouth, feigning shock, but her eyes danced with vicious delight. She had always hated me, and now I knew exactly why. I was living proof of a past she wanted erased. Ashley leaned against Devin, openly giggling at my public humiliation. Devin just swirled the ice in his Scotch glass, looking at me with utter contempt. They expected me to shatter. They expected me to run out of the country club in tears, proving once and for all that I was the fragile, pathetic dropout they always claimed I was. I did not shed a single tear. I did not break eye contact. I slowly pushed my chair back, the wooden legs scraping loudly against the marble floor. The laughter in the room dialed down to a tense, uncomfortable murmur as I walked toward the stage. My posture was perfectly straight, my steps deliberate and unhurried. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a single folded sheet of thick parchment paper. I walked up the steps to the stage, stopping inches away from Richard. His smug expression faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "I brought you a birthday gift, Richard," I said, my voice projecting clearly without the need for a microphone. I placed the folded document on the wooden podium between us. Before he could reach for it, Ashley marched up to the stage, her designer heels clicking aggressively. She snatched the paper away, waving it in the air like a piece of trash. "What is this garbage?" Ashley shrieked, her voice echoing through the ballroom. "You dropped out of law school because you could not handle the pressure. You are a pathetic college dropout who can barely afford to pay rent. Do not embarrass us with your handmade trash, Maddie. We all know you have nothing to offer." I turned my gaze to my sister. The silence in the room was deafening. Every elite guest was hanging on to my next word. At least I did not buy a fake master's degree online using Diane's platinum credit card. "Ashley," I said, my voice smooth and loud enough for every investor in the room to hear, "how is that prestigious hospital board treating you? Do they know you cannot even read a basic balance sheet?" Ashley gasped, her jaw dropping open. The color drained completely from Diane's face. Whispers immediately broke out among the socialites at the front tables. Ashley stood frozen in shock, her hand trembling as she held my document. I smoothly reached over, took the paper back from her stiff fingers, and looked directly into Richard's eyes. "Like I said, a gift," I whispered. With one swift, violent motion, I ripped the thick parchment completely in half. Then I put the pieces together and ripped them again, letting the shredded squares of paper flutter down onto the podium like snow. I turned my back on my father, my sister, and the entire ballroom of stunned guests. I walked down the center aisle, my head held high, ignoring the frantic whispers and shocked stares. I pushed open the heavy oak doors of the country club and stepped out into the cool night air. Back inside the ballroom, the silence was suffocating. Richard stared at the torn pieces of paper on the podium, his brow furrowed in confusion. Devin, his instincts as an investment banker kicking in, rushed up to the stage. He shoved Ashley aside and began frantically piecing the shredded documents together on the wood surface. As the letters aligned, Devon's breath hitched. He grabbed Richard's arm, his fingers digging into the expensive suit fabric. Richard Devon choked out his voice entirely devoid of its usual arrogance. "Look at the letterhead." Richard leaned in his reading glasses, slipping down his nose. The golden embossed logo at the top of the paper was unmistakable. It was Aegis Capital, the only venture capital firm in the entire country capable of buying out the massive toxic debt that was secretly drowning the Richard Center project. Without that specific bailout, Richard would lose everything to foreclosure by Monday morning. Devon's hands shook violently as he aligned the bottom half of the torn page. As a high-level banker, he knew instantly what he was looking at. It was a fully executed $4 million bailout guarantee, completely wiping out Richard's toxic debt and saving the entire family from total financial ruin. But because it was torn, the legal binding was completely voided. And right below the voided terms, the signature block rested clearly in plain sight. It read, "Madeline, Chief Executive Officer, Aegis Capital." Richard collapsed backward into a chair, his face turning the color of ash. His chest heaved as he struggled to draw breath. The room spun around him as the horrifying truth finally registered. The worthless college dropout he had just publicly disowned and humiliated was the billionaire savior he had been desperately begging his brokers to get a meeting with all year. And he had just forced her to destroy his only lifeline. The crisp Chicago wind hit my face the moment I pushed through the heavy brass doors of the Oak Brook Country Club. I did not run. I walked with the steady, measured pace of a woman who had just watched a 20-year nightmare finally burn to the ground. My heels clicked rhythmically against the cobblestone walkway leading to the valet line. Before I could even hand my ticket to the attendant, the club doors burst open behind me. "Madeline, stop right there." Richard's voice, usually a booming instrument of authority, cracked with raw panic. I turned slowly. The entire royal family was marching toward me under the amber glow of the parking lot streetlights. Richard was at the front, his face flushed a dangerous shade of crimson, clutching the shredded pieces of the Aegis Capital contract in his trembling fists. Diane trailed closely beside him, struggling to maintain her balance in her designer heels. Ashley and Devon brought up the rear, both looking absolutely furious and ready for a fight. "You tape this back together right now," Richard demanded, shoving his hands toward my chest. His chest heaved with heavy breaths. "You call whoever you need to call at Aegis. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them the CEO is a personal friend of yours and you ripped the wrong document. Do you understand me? You are going to fix this tonight, or I will ruin whatever pathetic life you have built for yourself." I looked from the torn parchment in his hands to the wild desperation in his eyes. "I do not work for you anymore, Richard, and I certainly do not perform magic tricks for men who just publicly disowned me in front of 100 people." Ashley lunged forward, pointing a manicured finger directly at my face. "You stupid, ungrateful brat! Do you have any idea what you just did? You just humiliated Dad in front of the entire board of directors. You are going to get on your knees and fix this, or I swear to God, I will make sure you never show your face in this city again." Before I could respond, Devon stepped between us. He was a towering man, and he used every inch of his height to intimidate me. He stood so close I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. He adjusted his suit jacket, wearing that arrogant, untouchable smirk he used to bully junior analysts at his investment bank. "Let us be very clear about how this is going to play out, Maddie." Devon set his voice a low, threatening rumble designed to strike fear. "You are a nobody. You have a checking account with what may be $5,000 in it. I sit on the executive board of the largest commercial bank in the Midwest. If you do not walk back inside and convince whoever actually runs Aegis Capital to honor this bailout, I will personally freeze every financial asset you have. I will flag your accounts for suspicious activity. I will make sure your landlord evicts you by Monday, and you will not even be able to buy a cup of coffee. You do not play games with real power. You are out of your league." I stared up at Devon, feeling completely unfazed by a threat that would have terrified me 5 years ago. That is a very bold strategy, Devin, I replied evenly. Using federal banking infrastructure to exact a personal vendetta. I am sure the regulatory boards would love to hear about that. My mother Diane let out a sharp cry of rage. She pushed past Devin and swung her hand hard. The slap echoed across the quiet parking lot, the sting of her diamond rings biting into my cheek. My head snapped to the side, and a warm metallic taste filled my mouth. "How dare you speak to Devin that way?" Diane shrieked, her perfectly maintained facade completely shattered. "You owe us everything. You are an illegitimate burden, a stain on my marriage that I tolerated for 33 years. We fed you. We clothed you. We gave you a roof over your head when you deserved nothing. You are going to fix Richard's project right now, or I will personally see you thrown onto the streets where you belong." I slowly turned my head back to face them. I raised my hand and wiped a thin trail of blood from the corner of my lip. Then I smiled. It was not a smile of submission. It was the smile of a predator watching its prey step blindly into a trap. Diane took a sudden step back, deeply unnerved by my reaction. "Devin," I said, ignoring my mother entirely and focusing my absolute attention onto my brother-in-law. "Do you remember that matte black Porsche 911 you bought 7 years ago? The one you used to celebrate your promotion to vice president?" Devon frowned, clearly thrown off by the sudden bizarre change in subject. "What are you talking about?" "I remember it vividly," I continued, my voice dangerously calm, "because my credit was practically perfect back then, and you convinced me to co-sign the auto loan. You told me it was just a formality to speed up the paperwork. But what you did not tell me was that you manipulated the income verification documents. You inflated your base salary by 300% using forged W-2 forms from your own bank to secure a better interest rate. That is wire fraud, Devin, a federal offense punishable by severe prison time." Devon's arrogant smirk vanished instantly. His eyes darted nervously toward Richard and Ashley. "You are bluffing," he stammered, his voice losing its bass. "That was years ago. Fraud has a very generous statute of limitations when concealed by a banking executive," I replied. "I kept copies of every single document you forced me to sign. Every forged signature. Every fake pay stub. I have had them sitting in a secure digital vault, just waiting for the exact right moment to see the light of day." "You are insane!" Ashley yelled, though her voice wavered with severe uncertainty. She grabbed Devon's arm, shaking him. "Devon, tell her she is lying. Tell her to shut up." Devon did not answer. He was staring at me, the color rapidly draining from his face. The intimidating, cutthroat investment banker was suddenly looking at the quiet sister-in-law he had bullied for years and realizing he had walked directly into his own destruction. Right on cue, Devon's phone began to vibrate violently in his breast pocket. The sudden harsh noise made everyone flinch. He slowly pulled the phone out, his eyes widening in horror as he read the caller ID. It was his bank's chief risk officer. "Answer it," I suggested softly. "It is probably bad news." Devon swiped the screen with a trembling thumb and brought the phone to his ear. "Yes," he answered, his voice barely a whisper. He listened for exactly 10 seconds. I watched his knees physically buckle. He had to lean heavily against the hood of a parked SUV to keep from collapsing onto the pavement. "What do you mean the entire toxic debt portfolio was sold?" Devon gasped into the phone, panic stripping away every single ounce of his corporate polish. "To who bought it?" "An anonymous buyer. If that portfolio collapses, I am going to federal prison." He dropped the phone. It clattered loudly onto the asphalt, the screen shattering. He looked at me, sheer unadulterated terror in his eyes. The valet pulled up smoothly, stopping a sleek midnight black Maybach right in front of us. The driver quickly stepped out, rounding the vehicle to open the rear door for me with a crisp bow. Richard, Diane, and Ashley stood frozen like statues. Their eyes darted from Devon's trembling, broken form to the $500,000 luxury vehicle idling quietly in front of me. The reality of my massive wealth, my absolute power, and the total destruction I had just orchestrated was finally sinking into their minds. They had poked a bear, and the bear owned the entire forest. I stepped into the plush leather interior of the Maybach and rolled the window down just enough to look my family in the eyes one last time. I strongly suggest you all find a good defense attorney by Monday morning. I said, my tone as cold and unforgiving as the Chicago wind. See you in court. The tinted window glided shut completely, cutting off Ashley's sudden, desperate scream. As the Maybach pulled away from the country club, leaving them in the dust, I pulled out my phone and opened a secure, encrypted messaging app. The game was no longer about survival. It was about absolute dismantling. By Tuesday morning, Devin and Ashley launched their counterattack. They were terrified, cornered, and entirely predictable. My secure phone buzzed at 6 o'clock in the morning with an urgent alert from Marcus, my chief operating officer. I opened the link he sent. It was a prominent Wall Street gossip blog, the kind that thrived on destroying reputations before breakfast. The headline read, "The Phantom of Aegis Capital. Is the industry's most ruthless CEO a mentally unstable college dropout?" The article was a masterclass in vicious anonymous slander. It was clearly dictated by Ashley, filled with intimate family details only she would know. It outlined my breakdown during my first year of law school. It mocked my inability to handle basic coursework, spinning my severe clinical anxiety into a diagnosis of dangerous, unpredictable hysteria. It painted me as a fragile fraud who had spent years hiding from the real world. But Devin had added his own lethal financial poison. The source accused me of falsifying my Series 7 and Series 63 financial licenses, claiming that the foundation of Aegis Capital was built entirely on regulatory fraud and shadow money. By 8 o'clock in the morning, the story had been picked up by Business Insider and Bloomberg's secondary feeds. Devin was actively using his vast network of media contacts to pour gasoline on the fire. He wanted to destroy my credibility so completely that my threat to his bank would look like the ravings of a lunatic. He wanted to make me radioactive. The fallout was instantaneous and brutal. In the high-stakes world of venture capital, trust is your only currency. My private line began ringing non-stop. Partners from 2 major European funds threatened to pull their pending capital injections. The stock prices of our subsidiary partners began to tremble. By noon, my board of directors called an emergency virtual meeting. I sat at the head of my long glass conference table, watching the grid of wealthy, panicked faces on the screen. One of our lead investors, a conservative billionaire from Boston, leaned into his camera with a deeply severe expression. He demanded a swift and overwhelming public response. He insisted I needed to issue a press release immediately, step down temporarily as CEO, and submit to an independent psychological evaluation to appease the volatile markets. They were spooked by the allegations of falsified federal licenses. Devin had hit the one nerve that could potentially unravel my empire. He thought my silence over the weekend was a sign of weakness. He thought he had me backed into a corner where my only option was surrender. I did not panic. I did not offer a tearful explanation. I looked directly into the camera lens and told the board of directors to hold their positions for exactly 24 hours. I absolutely refused to issue a defensive public statement. Denials only feed the media beast and make you look guilty. Instead, I ended the call, locked my office, and took the private elevator down to the basement level of the Aegis building. This was the domain of my digital forensics team, a highly specialized group of ex-cybersecurity operatives I paid exceptionally well to protect my anonymous status. I handed my lead technician, a brilliant, cynical hacker named Silas, the links to the anonymous blogs. I told him to strip away the proxy servers and trace the data packets back to their absolute origin. Devin was a corporate shark, but he was not a technological genius. He assumed standard commercial VPNs and encrypted email accounts would hide his tracks. He underestimated the resources of a firm that routinely hunted down corporate espionage. It took Silas less than 3 hours. He pulled up a global map on his massive central monitor, tracing a glowing red line past routing hubs in Eastern Europe, bouncing it back to North America, and dropping a digital pin directly onto a sleek skyscraper in downtown Chicago. Silas zoomed in, isolating the exact IP address, and the MAC address of the physical machine used to upload the defamatory financial documents and contact the reporters. I smiled, feeling a cold rush of pure victory. Devin had not just used his personal computer at home. His massive ego had driven him to use his highly monitored SEC-regulated secure banking terminal at his own firm. He had utilized his employer's federally insured network to distribute falsified financial claims designed to manipulate the market against a rival firm. Silas printed the raw data logs, placed them in a stark manila folder, and handed it to me across the server rack. He asked which major news outlet I wanted to send it to. He assumed I wanted a public execution, a massive headline to clear my name, shame my sister, and destroy my brother-in-law in the court of public opinion. I took the heavy folder from his hands and shook my head. The press would just turn this into a messy, protracted family drama. Media scandals eventually fade away. Federal indictments do not. I returned to my top-floor office and bypassed my public relations department entirely. I sat at my desk, opened an encrypted browser, and navigated directly to the Securities and Exchange Commission's whistleblower portal. I uploaded the IP traces, the MAC address logs, and a concise, devastating report outlining Devin's active market manipulation from a secure corporate bank terminal. I hit submit, setting a silent, invisible ticking time bomb right under Devin's custom leather desk chair. He thought we were fighting a petty public relations battle. He did not realize I had just triggered a federal investigation. The submission confirmation screen glowed a sterile green, signaling that the federal wheels were officially in motion. I closed the encrypted browser, knowing the SEC would take at least a few days to build their warrant against Devin. I had time to deal with the rest of the family. The next morning, the war shifted from the financial sector to the social arena. I was sitting in the back of my car reviewing acquisition contracts when my assistant sent me an urgent audio link. It was the latest episode of the Gold Coast Whisper, Chicago's most prominent high society podcast. The host was notorious for destroying reputations over afternoon tea. Today's special guest was my mother. I tapped play and Diane's trembling, tearful voice filled the quiet interior of my car. She was putting on the performance of a lifetime. "It breaks a mother's heart," Diane sobbed into the microphone, her voice dripping with manufactured anguish. "We took Madeline in. We loved her despite the circumstances of her birth. Richard raised her as his own flesh and blood. But she was always so bitter, always so resentful of Ashley's natural grace and success. And now, out of pure venomous jealousy, she is trying to tear down the family that gave her everything. She is unhinged. We are actually terrified for her mental state." The host made sympathetic noises, eating up every single dramatic lie. Diane continued to paint herself as the tragic, loving matriarch victimized by an illegitimate psychotic daughter who was using a fake corporate title to exact petty revenge. She completely omitted the part where they humiliated me on stage. She omitted the $4 million debt. She spun a fairy tale of my supposed madness to protect their social standing. I switched off the audio just as my driver pulled up to the glass doors of the Aegis Capitol building. I stepped out onto the sidewalk and was immediately blinded by the flash of a camera. A reporter from a local tabloid lunged forward, shoving a digital recorder practically into my teeth. "Madeline, what is your response to your mother's claims on the podcast this morning?" the reporter shouted, blocking my path. "Are you actively trying to sabotage the Richard Center out of sibling jealousy? Have you falsified your position at Aegis Capital?" My private security detail stepped in instantly, forming a solid wall of muscle between me and the screaming journalist. I did not break my stride. I did not raise my hands to block the cameras. I kept my face entirely impassive, a mask of absolute corporate indifference. Engaging with a street reporter would only give Diane's desperate narrative credibility. I walked into the grand lobby of my building and stepped into the private elevator. By the time I reached my office, I knew exactly how to handle Diane. A public denial was beneath me, but a private, devastating reality check was absolutely necessary. My mother was a creature of intense habit. It was a Thursday morning, which meant she was holding court at her favorite high-end boutique on Oak Street. It was an exclusive invitation-only showroom where wealthy wives drank imported champagne and spent their husbands' money while gossiping about their peers. I checked my watch. She would be at the register right now. I left my office instructing my driver to head directly to the Gold Coast shopping district. When I walked through the heavy glass doors of the boutique, the air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh lilies. I spotted Diane immediately. She was standing near the polished marble checkout counter, surrounded by three of her wealthiest country club cronies. She was basking in the glow of their sympathy, loudly recounting the trauma of dealing with an ungrateful child. "I simply do not know where she gets this vicious streak," Diane sighed dramatically, holding up a diamond tennis bracelet to the mirror. "Richard is heartbroken. We just have to pray she gets the psychiatric help she clearly needs." Her friends murmured their agreements, shooting her pitying looks. Diane turned to the boutique manager and placed the tennis bracelet along with 3 silk gowns onto the counter. She handed over her signature platinum credit card with a practiced flick of her wrist. I stood quietly near a display of leather handbags entirely unnoticed and watched the show unfold. The manager swiped the card. A sharp negative beep echoed over the quiet hum of the store. The manager frowned and ran the card again. Another beep. He looked up, his face tight with professional discomfort. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Wilson," the manager said, lowering his voice. "The card has been declined." Diane's practiced smile completely vanished. Her friends suddenly went dead silent. "That is impossible," Diane snapped, snatching the card back. "The bank must have flagged it for fraud protection because of the high amount. Run this one instead." She pulled out a different card and slammed it on the marble. The manager ran it. Declined. Diane's hands began to shake. She frantically dug into her designer purse, pulling out a third card, then a fourth. Declined. Declined. The federal agencies were moving faster than I anticipated. Devon's bank accounts were clearly undergoing a massive internal freeze, and the ripple effect had just hit Richard's heavily leveraged credit lines. Diane was standing in the middle of her favorite sanctuary, utterly bankrupt in front of the very women she spent her life trying to impress. Her friends took a collective awkward step back. The humiliation radiating from Diane was thick enough to choke on. She stared at the rejected plastic cards, her face turning a deep mottled red. I stepped out from behind the display and walked gracefully up to the counter. Diane gasped, her eyes widening in pure shock as I stepped right beside her. I did not say a word to my mother. I simply opened my clutch, pulled out my solid titanium American Express Centurion card, and handed it to the manager. "Put Mrs. Wilson's items on this, please," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the silent boutique. The manager quickly processed the heavy black card. It approved instantly. He handed me the receipt. I signed it with a smooth flourish and slid the card back into my clutch. Diane's friends stared at me in absolute awe. The supposedly unhinged broke dropout had just casually dropped $40,000 to save her mother from public humiliation. Diane was shaking with rage and mortification. "You think you can embarrass me?" she hissed under her breath, glaring at me with raw hatred. "You think paying for my things makes you look like the bigger person? You are nothing." I turned to Diane, stepping so close she had to crane her neck to look at me. I maintained a perfectly pleasant, polite smile for the benefit of her friends watching us. "I am not trying to be the bigger person, Diane," I whispered, keeping my voice so low, only she could hear the ice in my tone. "I am just paying my respects to the dead," Diane sneered. "What are you talking about?" I leaned in a fraction closer, my lips hovering right next to her ear. "Did you ever bother to check who bought this commercial building last month? Aegis Capital owns this entire block. Your favorite boutique's lease was up for renewal yesterday. I just personally denied the extension. They are being evicted next week and the building is being gutted. You will never set foot in here again." Diane's mouth fell open. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. Her perfectly manicured hands went entirely slack, and the heavy shopping bags slipped through her fingers. They hit the marble floor with a loud final thud. I left Diane standing paralyzed amidst the ruins of her social standing. By the time I arrived back at the Aegis Capital headquarters, the adrenaline had settled into a cold, sharp focus. I bypassed the main reception and took my private elevator up to the executive suite. The floor-to-ceiling windows of my office offered a commanding view of the Chicago skyline, a constant reminder of the empire I had built from nothing. I had barely settled into my leather chair when the heavy glass doors of my office swung open. My security protocol is flawless, yet Devin strolled in as if he owned the entire building. He wore a smug, infuriating grin, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke suit. He looked like a man who believed he had already won the war. Your lobby security is surprisingly easy to bypass when you possess top-tier federal banking credentials, Devin announced, dropping his briefcase directly onto my polished mahogany desk. He leaned over, planting both hands on the glass surface to loom over me. I figured you might want a face-to-face meeting after the absolute bloodbath your firm took in the press yesterday. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms, maintaining a perfectly level gaze. You are trespassing, Devin. That is an incredibly bold move for a man whose financial institution is currently under a severe microscope. Devin let out a sharp, arrogant laugh. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick, legal-sized manila envelope. He extracted a stack of heavily redacted documents and slid them across the desk until they rested inches from my hands. "Let us skip the corporate posturing, Madeline," he said, pulling up a chair and sitting down without an invitation. "Here's the stark reality of your situation. Your board of directors is panicking. Your European investors are threatening to pull their massive capital injections. The financial blogs are eating you alive and the market hates volatility. But I am a reasonable man. I brought a mutually beneficial solution." I glanced at the top page. It was a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement paired with a fully drafted funding contract. The terms were identical to the original paper I had ripped up at the country club. $4 million transferred directly to the Richard Center Holding Company to instantly cover their massive toxic debt. "Sign the bailout," Devin instructed, his tone dripping with fake sympathy. "You sign over the $4 million to save your father's legacy, and I will personally call off the media dogs. I will issue a full retraction through my anonymous sources. I will tell the press that the rumors about your mental instability and falsified licenses were fabricated by a disgruntled former employee. The scandal completely disappears, your board calms down, and we all walk away clean. It is a win for everyone." I stared at him, marveling at his absolute unchecked delusion. "You orchestrated a targeted, vicious defamation campaign against me, and now you want me to pay you $4 million to stop it. That is textbook extortion, Devin." "It is leverage," he corrected, pointing a manicured finger at me. "And you are going to take the deal because you have absolutely no other choice. If you refuse, the articles we published yesterday will look like child's play compared to what I drop tomorrow morning." He leaned closer, lowering his voice into a theatrical, menacing whisper. "Do you really think Diane never told me the truth about your biological father? The man was a convicted felon. He served a decade in federal prison for racketeering and grand larceny before he died. How do you think the conservative old money investors at Aegis Capital will react when they find out their brilliant CEO is the direct offspring of a career criminal? I have the sealed court records, Madeline. I have his mugshot. If I leak that to the Wall Street Journal, your pristine reputation is permanently destroyed. The board will vote you out by Friday afternoon." Devin sat back, crossing his legs, looking incredibly pleased with himself. He expected me to shatter. He expected tears begging or a frantic grab for a pen to sign his ridiculous contract. Instead, I slowly pushed his funding agreement aside, completely unbothered. I reached into the bottom drawer of my desk, retrieved a slim black folder and dropped it precisely where his contract had just been. "I do not negotiate with cornered animals, Devin," I replied, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "Open it." Devin frowned, his confident facade slipping for a fraction of a second. He reached out and flipped the black folder open. The top page was a highly detailed financial ledger. The second page was a series of wire transfer confirmations. The third page was a summary of offshore shell companies located entirely within the Cayman Islands. As he flipped through the documents, the color drained from his face at an alarming speed. His breathing turned shallow and rapid. His eyes darted across the pages, recognizing his own hidden account numbers. "You see, Devin," I explained, steepling my fingers together. "When you launched your pathetic little blog attack, I had my digital forensics team trace your IP address. But they did not stop there. Once they breached your secure banking terminal, I had them run a full diagnostic audit on your personal transaction history for the past 36 months. Devin swallowed hard, his hands beginning to tremble as he turned another page. Ashley has very expensive taste. I continued, my voice echoing off the quiet walls of my office. Summer vacations in Monaco, $50,000 Birkin bags, diamond tennis bracelets, custom sports cars. I always wondered how a vice president at a regional commercial bank could afford